you did an affidavit for me in two, actually, one on the 8th of January and then a clarification one on the 14th of January. Is that correct?
That's correct, Judge.
Right. You also provided us with a copy of an affidavit which you had done some time back.
That's correct, Judge.
And what we have is an unsigned version which correlates to effectively the report that you had compiled and then converted into an affidavit. Is that correct?
It's actually just a continuation of the previous report, yeah.
Right. And you will see there's a file in front of you with documents.
Before you go on, I'm the designated choir master. If you could please speak up very loudly.
I will
Thank
do
you.
so, ma'am.
The report which you have prepared, one finds first in the bundle of documents which you see at page 1. Correct?
Yes, I have it.
Right. Now, tell me what was the context, before we go to the substance of the affidavits, what was the context of the, and I'm going to call it for purposes of this, albeit that it's, why are these two copies? Why is there two copies? Sorry. For purposes of this, I'm going to call it the affidavit, which goes through 43 paragraphs. What was the context in which you did that affidavit?
Chair, at the time...
and sorry, before you go on, this was in 2013, correct?
That's correct, Chair. At that time, I was in a situation where I didn't know how to continue further because of the interference in the investigation from my side, from where I sit. Can you, sorry, is that better? Okay. So from, I was in a very desperate situation. I didn't know what to do anymore because of the interference which I perceived happened. And I think it was also in the time of the FUL application and things that came out of that, or it was just before that. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember exactly the date. And then I decided I will depose to an affidavit regarding the conduct of Advocate Mokgoro as well as Lieutenant General Magluli. After deposing to the affidavit with the annexes, I then informed one of my senior officers at the DPCI, and I opened the docket, and the docket was handed to a Soli Magashua, who was a colonel at the time for investigation. That's the context in terms of which I made this affidavit.
And what happened to it?
As far from what I've been told by, he's now Brigadier Magashua, that he had investigated the matter. The matter was then taken away from him, was put in a safe, according to him. And then there was questions in Parliament regarding this specific investigation, and it was said that the investigation is still continuing, although he had already finished his investigation by that time. It was not presented to the MPA for the decision. In the meantime, the docket has been returned to him, and I think it is either with the MPA for the decision or it's on its way to the MPA for the decision.
When you say in the meantime, how recently?
I spoke to him either early last year, end of last year or early this year.
Now, I was putting the affidavits into context, but I should probably have started off by saying you are a colonel in the South African Police Force and you are attached to the Directorate for Priority Crimes Investigation. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
And maybe for purposes of the record, how long have you been a member of the South African Police Services?
Chair, I joined in 1986 under until 2000. Then I joined the DSO up until 2009, and I came back to SABC since 2009.
And you, together with one Piet Viljoen, were, can I use the word co-opted or seconded from Cape Town to do the Mluli investigations in Gauteng, correct?
That is correct, Chair.
And you're primarily Cape-based? Or
That is correct, Chair.
you suffer the Gauteng with me?
That is correct, Chair.
And you're currently placed in the anti-corruption task team?
That is correct, Chair.
Right. Now, I'm first going to deal with the Mluli matter, and then we're going to deal with the plane ticket scenario which comes up in your affidavit.
That is correct, Chair.
Right? And you set out the background to the Mluli matter, and you do that. I'm not going to read you, we've had lots of information about it. And you deal with that in paragraphs 1 to 8 of your affidavit, correct?
That is correct. Are we referring to the affidavit or my actual affidavit of the 9th of January?
We'll look at the affidavit in January 1st.
Okay. I just want to get to
Right.
that one.
We'll put that one side. And in your conclusion, in the matter of the 9th of January, you allude to, you point out there was the issue of declassification of documentation, and you were not aware of an outright refusal for the declassification of documents, correct?
That is correct, Chair.
We're going to come back to that issue. I'm going to go to your other affidavit with more details. When we deal with charges which have been subject of the withdrawal of Advocate Mokgoro, you say the prosecution thereof did not require declassification of any documents. Can you elaborate on that? And in that elaboration, I want you to take us through the other affidavit you did in which details your investigation, and I will point the chair to the investigation. If you could do that.
Yes, Chair. At the time, when the docket was submitted to the SCCU, Advocate Smith, it didn't, as far as I can remember, didn't have any classified documents in the docket. In other words, the classification of dockets could not have been an issue at the time. The only classified documents which related to that specific incident would have been the two vehicles in question, in other words, the vehicles that was traded in, and it would have been the documents that we have received from crime intelligence regarding the purchase of those two vehicles. But from my knowledge, and as far as I can remember, those two documents were not in the docket at the time when the decision was made to apply for the warrant of arrest. If I can go to my, if that is what you do, yeah. If I can go to my initial affidavit, you'll see that when I, just want to see where that is.
The easiest place is maybe to start on your report, which is an annexure KDR1 to that affidavit,
yes.
which is the first document in the bundle.
I was looking for that one, Chair. In terms of this investigation, or the, let's call it the vehicle investigation, there was warrants of arrest prepared, and it was handed to the NPA on the 2nd of September 2011. And on that same date, the docket was handed to the relevant magistrate, senior magistrate at the Pretoria Magistrates Court for a decision. The warrants of arrest was issued on the 6th of September. And we obtained went to fetch the warrant of arrest from the magistrate's office. Sorry, Chair, I am mistaken. I'm talking about the search warrants. Maybe I should just start with the search warrants, yeah.
I was about to tell you.
Sorry, I'm mistaken. When I'm talking about these warrants, I'm talking about the search warrants, not the warrants of arrest. So we were able to obtain the search warrants, and then due to the sensitivity of the matter that at hand, I then asked that management, the police's management, intervene in the process, because I don't want to go and search a sister department within my own department. And in that regard, Lieutenant General Dramat, Lieutenant General Labia, who is the current head of the DPCI, as well as Major General Sabia, Major General Machachi, who was the head of CI at the time, myself and Falyun met, and an agreement was reached to appoint a certain Major General Henkel, to facilitate the process, to make sure that we do it in the right way. This meeting took place on the 14th of September. Sorry, the first meeting was held on the 13th of this September, and then I met with Henkel on the 14th of September. Ultimately, that led to a request from the NDPP at the time, Advocate Simelane, to be briefed on the matter. I do not know what prompted that, but Advocate Smith and I went and briefed, I think it was Advocate Masniati and Advocate Hofmeyer at the time, who in turn briefed Advocate Simelane. After that session, the Advocate Simelane stated that the warrants was issued, we need to execute these warrants.
And you actually gave, if you look at paragraph 41 of your report, you gave a copy of the search warrants to the Office of the Inspector General.
That is correct, Chair. In fact, if I can go just back a little bit, I think in August, 17th of August, we supplied a file, that will be paragraph 26 of that document, with relevant information regarding what we were investigating to the Inspector General. And it was handed to them on the 18th of August 2011. So subsequent to that, we received a feedback from them in which they stated that they're not going to investigate the matter. It's not within their mandate. And then,
so if I take you then to paragraph 42, your majors and the generals were alerted to that, and they were aware that you were investigating alleged criminal abuse of the Secret Service account, and you were permitted to continue with the investigation. Correct?
That is correct, Chair. As you can see, in terms of from my report, you can see that on the 31st of October 2011, Henkel, the cook, and General Jacobs, as well as the Brigadier van Graan, went to see the Inspector General and to inform her of the situation developing at CI. In other words, we at that stage have received credible information from within CI regarding the ongoings at Crime Intelligence.
If you go to the next paragraph, on 2 November, you also held a meeting. This was one of the initial meetings you held with the Auditor General, correct?
That is correct, Chair.
And they were briefed, and they also indicated to you that they didn't wish to be part of the process at that juncture.
That is correct, Chair.
In fact, as we will develop later, they never wished to be part of it, correct?
Yeah, they would, I think they were worried about the independence, whatever they did on their own, independently from us.
And you continue to keep the Inspector General informed, as you see by paragraph 46, and in fact certain reports were given to the Inspector General, correct?
That is correct, Chair.
All right.
If I can just clarify, the report in terms of paragraph 46 relates to intelligence failure. That is the mandate of the of the Inspector General if there is intelligence failure within the crime intelligence environment. So that is what that was about the intelligence failure.
It's not the Inspector General's job to hide or prevent investigations of abuse of the Secret Service Fund.
Not at all, Chair.
Right. You then continued with your investigation and a second docket was opened.
That is correct, Chair. Maybe I should just give a little bit background as to why second docket was opened. The first docket related, as I said, to the vehicle. The second docket related to information that was given to us by a member of crime intelligence who I took various statements from, who participated in the wrongdoings within crime intelligence. So he had first-hand knowledge. Obviously, in terms of, he would probably, if he had testified, he would have testified as a Section 204 witness. That situation led us to open an additional docket because I initially didn't want to put the two together because it was a separate issue, the vehicles, and then the additional information we dealt with separately in a different docket.
You then came to November, and in the chronology there were then representations made to Advocate Mokgoro, which you got to know about later.
Correct? That is correct, Chair.
Right. And I'm going to skip through because what is then in your chronology deals with what transpires in the NPA's office if one looks at paragraphs 51 to 57.
That is correct,
56 actually.
Yeah.
Right? And then in 57 you make the submission that on 28th November the Acting Divisional Commissioner for Crime Intelligence, they were temporarily transferred from the CI to another division. Could you explain that?
Chair, at the time, as I said, Major General Henkel was appointed as the liaison officer between myself, in other words, the investigation and crime intelligence. We put a process in place where we made sure whatever documents that I get, we adhere to the law in terms of that we make sure that I can have the documents and the documents need to be treated accordingly. Then
Sorry, let me interrupt. There is some issue about the search warrants, and maybe you can clarify that process on how the documents was obtained and where the search warrants fitted into the process.
Chair, as I said, we after obtaining the search warrants, I deemed it fit to speak to General Dramat at the time because I didn't feel comfortable searching the offices of crime intelligence because I thought there was another way to deal with it. After that conversation and that meeting that we had, there was an agreement reached that the documents would be handed to us. And subsequent to that, we found out, we received more information, which then led us to ask for more documents. That is how that process unfolded at the end of the day. We didn't actually execute the search warrant at the time. That's how I see it. I'm sorry. Is that better? Okay, sorry.
So in effect, the documentation which you had, which you used to make out your case, was handed over to you by SABC.
That is correct,
by
Chair.
agreement.
That is correct, Chair.
Or shall I call it CI rather than SABC? Be it.
Yeah.
Right. One of the people implicated, which was a Major General Lazarus, he was the person who was, tell us who he was again?
Major General Lazarus at the time was the head of the Secret Services account. Let's call him the CFO of that account.
Right.
In other words, he signed off on all the acquisitions that was made through the account.
And he was then suspended on the 5th of December.
That is correct, Chair.
Right. Now there are currently criminal proceedings underway in respect of both Lazarus and one Barnard, correct?
That is correct, Chair. In fact, the matter is nearly done. It's just final arguments that needs to be presented to court.
And that is in relation to transactions akin or the same type of methodology that was adopted in relation to what you call your vehicles docket.
That's correct, Chair.
And this criminal proceedings wasn't impeded in any way by declassification concerns.
No, we worked with the documents that were provided to us by the service provider in question. Chair, I just want to go back. You've asked me a question earlier as to how it came about that Machachi, Henkel, and Slachwaya were replaced or moved. From my information at the time and the letter that I've seen, is that Mr. Cecil Burgess, who was the presiding officer, was it presiding officer of the intelligence?
He chaired the Joint
Yes.
Parliamentary Committee on Intelligence.
Yes. He wrote a letter to the management of CI, instructing them to transfer, be it temporary, because none of it was probably coached as temporary, but none of these people went back to crime intelligence, to transfer these members out of that environment, which when I saw the letter, I thought it was highly unusual.
And these were the very people who had been designated to assist you in your criminal investigations, correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Now, you were then informed that the matter was going to be withdrawn on the 6th of December, and you were not provided with any reasons for the withdrawal.
That is correct,
at
Chair.
that juncture.
That's correct.
Right. You were then, subsequent to the withdrawal, provided with the memorandums of the 4th of December,
That is correct, Chair.
in which it was indicated to you whether there was evidence or not is, in my view, not important for my decision in the matter.
That is correct, Chair.
Were you or anybody involved in the investigation consulted about this?
No, we were not.
Are you ordinarily consulted by the prosecutions involved in matters when they decide they're going to withdraw cases you are investigating?
Chair, I've been working within SABC and the NPA for a long time, and I'm fortunate enough to work with a lot of experienced prosecutors, and I did a lot of high-profile cases. These kind of decisions doesn't just get taken in mid-air. They will consult with you. They will ask you what's going on. They will get your opinion. Doesn't mean that they have to take your opinion into account, but they will, because of the nature of the case and the importance it has. So yes, I've always been consulted in that matter. I understand that decisions can be made without consulting, but I think in this matter, that was not an option.
And you were then apprised as to what informed that decision, correct?
That is correct, Chair. If I can just allude to paragraph 62, and I will read it out to you. The basis on which Advocate Murebe took his decision did not form part of this representation. In other words, the representation given to him by General Mdluli. But it formed part of, and I'm referring now to the question of the Inspector General. It formed part of the representations to the employer. So as far as I can remember, there was no mention of the Inspector General. Or I'm so sorry, let me just have a look at the document. So I might just make a mistake
No,
here.
I think you're entirely correct. Before you get confused, and I don't want to lead you, but what you're saying in paragraph 62 is that the representations that was provided to Advocate Mokgoro made no mention of the Inspector General.
That's as far as I can remember, Chair. That's why I wrote this paragraph here. But it was part of the representations to the employer.
We've heard what has transpired on the 8th. the 4th, we aware that there was a meeting with Advocate Jay Govender at the Inspector General office, and I'm trying to kick it a little further. The matter is then withdrawn in court on the 14th of December.
That's
Right.
correct, Chair.
Right. And what are you told what needs to happen for the matter to be back on the roll?
Chair, the matter was withdrawn. The matter was done. That's how I understood it. It was. I'm talking now from the point of view of the memo that I received. But we have discussed between ourselves that we will take it further. We will take it to the Inspector General, Office of the Inspector General, get in writing what is their mandate now. And I also said that I will go to the AG and ask them the same question from my discussions with Advocate Breitenbach at the time.
So you then go and you speak to Advocate Govender at the Inspector General's office on the 10th of January, correct?
That is correct, Chair.
And she tells you must make a formal request to the Inspector General, and she indicates you that Advocate Mokgoro did not consult with the office prior to any withdrawal, correct?
That's correct, Chair. And that led me to ask, I think it's through the Office of General Dramat, to request the Acting National Commissioner at the time, which was Lieutenant General Mokgoro, to write to the Inspector General and to get clarity on the situation.
Right. And then there is some internal mechanisms within SAPS that takes place, and you then continue with opening up of further dockets and further investigations.
That is correct, Chair.
Right. You continue to do that, and in February you are informed to halt the investigations.
That is correct, Chair.
And that's pursuant to an instruction you are given to do so.
That is correct, Chair.
And how does that come about?
It came about in terms of the, we wanted to give an opportunity for the Inspector General to make that decision. Although I knew what the decision was at the time already, but we thought that we have to respect this process and give them time to come back to us with the actual decision. And that is, as far as I can remember, why we stopped the investigation at that point in time.
You then stopped the investigation in February, and you're aware, if you look at paragraph 76, there was then a meeting between the Lieutenant General and the IGI, correct?
That's correct, Chair.
And your Lieutenant General was provided with up-to-date dockets of the matter, and there was then subsequent to that also disciplinary proceedings, if one turns the page to 78, which had then been halted in respect of Major General Lazarus and Lieutenant General Mluli in February 2012.
That is correct, Chair. That was to give the Inspector General a chance to make a decision, because they had the actual documents were given to them so that they can have a look at it.
So in other words, everything got stopped to allow the IGI to make a determination
That's
about
correct,
the
Chair.
jurisdiction. Right? You then continue under the heading of interference, and you then deal with what happens to Mr. Singh. Is it Mr. Singh? Mr. Singh was the person who had provided you with information, whom you identified it as the Section 204 witness, correct?
No, it was Naidu.
Ah, Naidu, that's right. Sorry. Mr. Singh, Major General Lazarus and Naidu accompanied them. And what happened with the interference?
Chair, at the time, they intimidated Naidu to such an extent that he came to me the next day that he wanted to go into the witness protection program. So that was arranged for him to go into it. There were other things also that happened as a part of that meeting, which I'm not going to go into now, but it led to Mr. Naidu being taken into the witness protection program.
Right. And you detail that in those ensuing paragraphs until you come to what you call your conclusion in this matter. Right?
That's correct, Chair.
Right. And then you deal with the email which had been received from Advocate Govender in paragraph 96, where she makes the position of the IG vis-a-vis criminal investigations very clear, and she draws the relevant sections of the Act to your attention.
That is correct,
Right.
Chair.
And you see on paragraph 21 that that is your report up to the 2nd of March 2012. Right. I then want to take you to your affidavit, which then picks it up in paragraph 9, 274. And I'm now dealing with the affidavit of 2013.
That is correct,
Right.
Chair.
You get a response from the Inspector General, which then clarifies the Inspector General's position.
That is correct, Chair. After the letter dated 20 February from General Mokgoro, we received the response. I think what is dated 19th March 2012.
Now, some of the documents, and just want to go to it, you indicate not attached. Could you just explain to the inquiry why it was not attached?
Chair, what happened is when I drafted my affidavit and finalized the affidavit, I couldn't attach all the documents to the affidavit because some of the documents were classified. So that is why I say I've got the document, but it is classified. So it is available but classified. And at that stage, I had big problems in getting documents declassified. So that's why I didn't want to add any documents.
But I simply, for the record purposes, that the document which may have been classified at the time you did that, for the record, we know that Annexure KDR is the letter of the 19th of March 2012, which is page 112 in our bundle that we put before Advocate Ferreira, and that was the response that came from the IGI to the Lieutenant General. Correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Right. Then on the 23rd, Lieutenant General Dramat addresses a letter to Advocate Jiba, advising of the opinion of the Inspector General, and provides a copy of that.
That is correct, Chair.
And that we know is page 111 of the bundle we have. For the presiding officers, I'm skipping through this because we discussed these documents in detail with Advocate Ferreira, and there's no point served in, I want to get to a later position. Right? You were then aware of a position adopted by Advocate Mokgoro on the 30th of March, which is page 117 of our bundle, where he effectively indicates that the matter was closed. Correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Right. And you detail that, and to that there is then a letter addressed to Lieutenant General Dramat, and he responds, which is in paragraph 14, and we see that at page 27 of the bundle before you. And this was a document we did not previously have, but it's his KDR, and it's the letter which Lieutenant General Dramat writes to Advocate Jiba in April 2012, where he effectively asks her, I received a response again from Advocate Mokgoro that the matter is finalized and that he abides by his decisions. I would appreciate a decision on the matter by you as the ultimate authority in respect of the consideration of a prosecution. Correct?
That's correct, Chair.
A response is then received, which is your KDR 09, which is on page 28, on the 4th of May, referring back to the letter of the 23rd of April, where Lieutenant General Dramat is informed by Jackie Lepinka in her capacity as the Manager Executive Support to the NDPP that the matter was attended to by Advocate Mokgoro as it falls within his jurisdiction. Correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Right. And in your view, both those letters were sent to Advocate Jiba, and there was no joy received in a move from that decision that was initially taken by Advocate Mokgoro. Correct?
There was no response from Advocate Jiba. That's why I say later on here, I do not know whether Advocate Jiba received the documentation or not.
If I then go further on in your documentation, you say that SABC had in the meantime lifted the suspension in respect of Mluli on the 31st of March.
That is correct, Chair.
Correct? And the first move that he did was essentially to send a circular to all members warning them not to disclose classified information to the media and other persons, and they would be the subject of disciplinary inquiry.
That is correct, Chair.
Right. And in your affidavit, it is Annex KDR 10, and you didn't attach it because it wasn't yours to declassify.
That's correct, Chair.
For the inquiry's information, that document has since been declassified by crime intelligence for our purposes, and it is found at page 146 of the bundle. It's the very last document, and it effectively is an indication that on the 4th of April 2012, Lieutenant General Mluli indicated that the disclosure of classified information would result in disciplinary proceedings or criminal prosecutions, and that was circulated throughout CI.
That is
Correct?
correct, Chair. That's how I understood it. In fact, it went further than just a circulation. There's a certificate attached to this document, which basically states that you have to certify that you take notice and cognizance of this document.
That was the last letter attached to it.
The last page of that letter.
So the very person who was subject to your investigation was back at the head of crime intelligence and closing off any classification of any documents being declassified.
That is
Is that
correct.
the scenario you were
That is correct,
faced
Chair.
with?
Yes.
Right. You then sought to get documents from Juan Nelson, and you then describe what transpired, that Advocate Mluli wanted you, a letter indicating from you that you were continuing with the investigation against him or not. Correct?
That is correct, Chair.
And you referred his request to Lieutenant General Dramat.
That's correct.
What then transpired in respect of complaints then being lodged against you?
Together with this letter, the one that we just dealt with, there was another letter, also which was sent to Lieutenant General Dramat regarding my conduct, and I can just quote certain things as I quoted here. I didn't attach the document, but in the letter he accuses me of unethical conduct and bad intentions. He ends the letter off by stating that he has instructed all personnel within crime intelligence not to provide any information so solicited, and that any such attempts be immediately reported.
And it then resulted in the police officer to whom you had communicated, he was transferred.
That's correct, Chair.
And in your mind, what did this amount to?
Chair, it amounted to stopping the investigation. I am still struggling, the same struggle now, and I think it resulted from this process that started back then already.
But what were the complaints related to? What was the subject of the complaint against you?
Against me. It is what I've just read to you, Chair. He accused me of unethical conduct and bad intentions. That was the substance of the.
I want to
Of
know
the
what
complaint.
unethical conduct in relation to what?
I don't
What
know.
action?
No, it wasn't stated in the letter. So it's just those words that was mentioned. So it wasn't stated.
And was this taken up with the ICD or IPID at the time?
No, Chair, I didn't.
Okay.
I took it up with General Ramat, who gave me the letter, copy of the letter.
And did Lieutenant General Dramat consider it necessary to take any steps?
Chair, I do not know what he did or didn't do. I do know that Lieutenant General Madluli was suspended again shortly after that. So I do not know whether it's a consequence of the letter or whether something else happened. I will just speculate.
But if one then goes to paragraph 25, you quote a further paragraph from this letter, correct?
That's correct, Chair.
And in that you say, Mluli said that it is common knowledge that the relevant bodies, namely the Inspector General of Intelligence and the Auditor General, had been tasked with the investigation surrounding the issue of crime intelligence.
That's correct, Chair. I do not know where he received the information from, because at that time, I just want to make sure, when the letter from
It was May, 7th of May.
from the Inspector General, the 7th of May,
No, 19th of March.
19th of March, because at the time, the Inspector General already said that it is not within her, doesn't fall within her ambit. She's not doing the investigation. It is with SABC.
He then got to be resuspended. Right.
That's correct, Chair.
You also point out that you were aware that there was a meeting between Advocate Mokgoro and Advocate J. Govendon from the IG's office on the 20th of March.
That is correct, Chair. She informed me of same.
Right. But you don't know what, you were not present at that meeting.
I wasn't present, but I know the content of the discussion. The discussion went about the role of the IG and the mandate of the IG.
And you were then also provided with a copy of the memorandum which Advocates Breitenbach and Ferreira gave to Advocate Jiba.
That is correct, Chair.
There was then an accusation made in a response to that memorandum by Advocate Mokgoro that SABC had illegally obtained documentation from CI. If you look at paragraph 30 of your report, where you quoted in paragraph 31, it says that after having been privy to other classified, confidential and high-level discussions with police management, I am concerned that our actions in that matter may be interpreted justifiably so as amounting to serious abuse of the legal process and as being motivated by ulterior purpose.
That's correct, Chair.
What was he talking about? Do you have any idea?
I don't have an idea, Chair, because he never came to me to ask me about any of these alleged illegalities. We were not, and as far as I know, neither myself nor General General Dramat was asked. So the version that he has here is the version that the suspects in the matter gave him. It doesn't come from anywhere else, just from the suspects in this specific matter. And it was very unfortunate because it places us in a very, very difficult situation going further with this investigation.
In which way do you say that, Colonel Officer?
I'm saying that because, as I said, up to date, no document has been declassified. And we are still struggling with members from crime intelligence to come forward to talk to us. So this instruction that was given in 2011 and the aspersion that was placed on this investigation has lasting effects up until today.
And those aspersions was cast by Advocate Mokgoro.
Inter alia, yes.
And who else besides Advocate Mokgoro?
Well, it would be the suspects in the matter. It would be Lazarus, Madluli, Barnard, Singh, not so much Barnard, but Singh and so forth.
Now, you draw the conclusion that Advocate Mokgoro could only have gotten this from the representations made or information from the suspects, because there's a correlation between the wording which he then states in his letter, which you quote in paragraph 33, and the wording which you quote in paragraph 25 as emanating from Mluli, where he says it is a known fact that the Auditor General examined the information containing the alleged criminal transactions by Mluli and Barnard, and based on rules governing the Secret Service account, found nothing untoward with the transaction.
That's correct, Chair.
Do you know where he could have gotten that information?
Well, the only people that could have told him is the suspects in this matter that could have told him, that would have given him that kind of information.
Could he have gotten that information from General Dramat?
No, and it's not possible, because my interaction with General Dramat is the opposite of this.
And General Dramat would have been getting his information from you.
That's correct, Chair.
And Mokgoro goes further and states that the necessary report in this regard was given to the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence and as such to Parliament. Do you recall that?
Yes, I recall it, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it never happened.
Right. And as far as you were aware, that report on the 36th of April was the only response to the memorandum that you had seen.
That's correct, Chair.
Right. Now, you continued to meet with the Auditor General, and in your documentation, one sees it at page 29 of your bundle. This is a letter which you addressed to Alice Miller at the Auditor General's office, and you did that in July of 2012, correct?
That is correct, Chair. Maybe I should just give elaborate a little bit regarding not the letter itself, but our interaction with the AG did not only regard this, but they were doing their own investigation at the time after we've alerted them and gave them the information, and so they had access to the documentation that we had prior to us being stopped getting further information. So we were interacting for them to get access to the documents so that they can do their own investigation.
Right. And in fact, in paragraph 35, you detail a meeting which you had, which precedes your letter in May. You inquired about the statement made by Advocate Mokgoro, and you showed them a copy of the memorandum.
That's correct.
And they denied to you having made such a finding.
That is correct, Chair.
And they denied that such a report had been tabled to the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence.
That is correct, Chair.
And this was followed up by the letter which you then get on the 11th of July 2012, which is at page 29.
I think the 25th of July, because her letter is dated 25 July 2012.
Sorry, you put it? Yes, her letter is at page 30.
That's correct. 31, yes.
Right. And she confirms that they did not examine the alleged criminal transaction nor reach the relevant conclusions as set out in your letter of 11th of July.
That is correct, Chair.
Right. And that was your formal interactions with the Auditor General.
That's correct, Chair.
Right. Right. You then in paragraph 37 deal with the representations made, and you comment on those, and then in page 38 you point out that the task team had been appointed to investigate the allegations which Mluli had made about a plot against him, and the person appointed was Mr. Enver Daniels to investigate those allegations.
You're talking about paragraph 38 now.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
And as far as you were aware, it was found that there was no such conspiracy.
That is correct, Chair.
And in paragraph 39, you point out that the source was in fact a co-collaborator.
That is correct, yeah. That's correct, Chair. That's how I was informed, yes.
Right. You then became aware, and you were aware that Advocate Jiba had met with General Dramat, and you were told that according to them the matter was only provisionally withdrawn. It would be placed on the court roll as soon as investigations would be finalized.
That's correct, Chair. I was actually a little bit taken aback, and I think General Dramat as well, because at that stage we were still under the impression this matter has been finalized, because that is what was told to us, and that is according to the letters that we had. So we were under that impression. There was no indication from the NDPA side that the matter is continuing. It's only after this meeting that that became, it's as if it never happened. And that's what, that I was a little bit flabbergasted when I saw, when I heard
And
this.
it wished away the 8 months preceding that.
That's correct, yeah.
Now, Advocate Mkwebi's position adopted and Advocate Jibas before this inquiry was that there were investigations that had to be ensued subsequent to the meeting of the 9th of December, which was held between Advocate Mzanyati, Advocate Mkwebi and Advocate Breitenbach. And it was because those investigations had not been done that nothing further had happened in the matter. Could you comment on that?
Yes, Chair, I can comment on that. I think that Mr. Mokgoro is confusing the issue here. At that time, this information was not in front. I'm talking about the information regarding the other alleged criminality. Was not in front of the NPA. They couldn't have issued instructions for further investigation. It wasn't there. It was only the vehicle docket that was there. In respect of that docket, on which the decision was made, there was no impediment for that docket not to continue or for that docket not to be placed on the court roll. I do agree in respect of the additional information that came forward afterwards, after that date. In other words, we started to speak to Naidu in November 2011, and the affidavits were taken in November and December and January. So it took us a long time to finalize all these affidavits. Only then those issues became relevant. But at the time of this decision that he made, it was not relevant. It was not part of the docket.
Right. Now, you expressed the view in paragraph 8 that in your view there was no basis upon which this prosecution should not have ensued. In paragraph 8 of your January affidavit, I apologize.
Sorry, I just need to go there.
The requisite evidence to be used in such a prosecution, it's about 8 to 10 lines had been obtained. You don't know why these have not been presented separate from those that do require documents to be declassified, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
You remain the investigating officer on this matter, correct?
Up until 2015, when General Ntlemeza removed me as the investigating officer. During his tenure, nothing happened. No one else was appointed. And then only when General Labia came back, we started continuing with the investigation, or continued the investigation. And Lieutenant General Matakata was appointed in the interim, after General Ntlemeza was asked to leave. So during her tenure, and then subsequent follow-up from General Labia, we continued with the investigation again.
Right. And you were aware that if I take you to page 35 in your bundle, you were aware that this, have you seen this report before?
I've seen it, I think it was yesterday or the day before when I consulted with yourself.
And this was a report which, on the indications of it, is a report which is prepared by the prosecutors, Lau and Rousseau, to Advocate Abrams, correct?
That's
what
correct.
it says.
That's correct. Yeah.
And it gives a synopsis of the veracity of the search warrants, etc. And it concludes that it's the National Commissioner that must address certain issues. Now, one of the things that had bothered this inquiry is since the withdrawal...
Sorry. For the record, say what page this report is?
It's on, the report is on page 35 of the Rule of Sub bundle. It's the report from Lau and Rousseau to Abrams, dated the 24th of August, 26th of August 2015. And I'm not going to take you through the substance of the report, but in essence, the nub of the complaint is that the criminal is that all these charges against Advocate Mluli have been lumped together. To prove the others, you require declassification of documentation, and there has been no decision emanating from the National Commission of Police making that decision. Would that be correct?
That be correct, Chair. Maybe I should also just give some context here. When we realized that the matter in terms of the BMW, the vehicle docket, is not considered by the NPA to be prosecuted. I went to, I can't remember the advocate's name, but she was at the SACU, and I was then referred to Advocate Nell in respect of the other issues regarding the other information that came forward, other alleged criminality. I then went to see him. He agreed to prosecute, but when he heard that General Mluli was part of the suspects in the matter, he declined. He said he cannot get involved in respect of General Mluli, but there is a portion of the investigation and the prosecution that he will deal with. And that is what he did. He dealt with that specific portion. Now, at that stage, and that was in also the end of 2011, 2012. No, it's about 2012. I'm not exactly sure. We revert the other information back again to the original car docket, so that we can make a complete docket of that specific investigation. That is how the other information, or the other alleged criminality, came back to the car, not came back, but came to the car docket. So it was not initially there. It was in the other docket, which was with Nell. He didn't want to prosecute in respect of Mluli, so we brought whatever relates to Mluli, we brought back to the vehicle docket. We brought to the vehicle docket at that time.
Did he verbalize why he didn't want to get involved?
Yes, he did. He said he didn't want to get involved because of the situation he had with Mluli prior to this. I didn't know. I didn't know the scene in Gauteng at the time, so I knew about Gerinel. I didn't know him, and I was informed not by him but someone else after he said that he didn't want to get involved, that he was apparently arrested, or Mluli was behind his arrest. I didn't know at that time, so that's why he declined not to get involved.
So and there had been successive National Commissioners of Police in acting positions subsequent to this. Is that correct?
That's correct. We had the current National Commissioner, and then we had General Piecha wasn't acting, but we also had various other acting National Commissioners, yes.
And as an investigating officer, you sit in the invidious position is you can't bring legal proceedings for decisions not taken to declassify classified documents, because the very person from whom you would need consent to get that is the very person not giving a decision in respect of declassification.
That's correct, yeah. In that, I'm not referring to General Sithole now. I'm referring to other members of.
You're referring to the office generally.
Yes.
Right. And you sit with a position where the prosecutorial authority had clearly brought it to a dead stop in 2011, 2012, in your view, and because of the allegations that had been made by Advocate Mokgoro at that time, it became incredibly difficult for you to harness that horse again.
That's correct, Chair. As I said, I'm still struggling with the same problem. As I also said that after the event with Advocate Jiba and Lieutenant General Jamat, I felt that we had the backing of the NPA again in respect of her, but then and the same applied to when Advocate Abrams were appointed, because he also assisted in the sense that he sent a letter off to the National Commissioner at the time, or the acting National Commissioner, asking him to declassify the document. So I had that feeling that we are getting assistance. And then when subsequent to all the other prosecutors being prosecuted, appointed with Low and Rousseau, the same thing then just continued. I didn't have a problem with the assistance in terms of the MPA.
And when Mr. Nxana was actually appointed, different prosecutors were appointed, and
That's correct, Chair.
they sought to re-enroll the matter, and it was withdrawn.
That is correct, Chair. And they provided with they provided me with a lengthy charge sheet and a very comprehensive charge sheet in respect of the complete matter, which I've given to SABC, so they know exactly what the charges are about.
And so in your view, what is the impediment to a prosecution?
At this point in time, it's the non-declassification of the documentation.
And was that an impediment to the prosecution in December 2011?
No, Chair, that wasn't the issue.
And you say that because it's different charges that prevailed.
That's correct, Chair, and because there was no classified documents part of that specific prosecution.
You then draw the conclusion in paragraph 42 of the complaint that you lodged, that the events described shows a pattern of interference by Mluli and Mokgoro, and the allegations of alleged criminality within CI in which have been investigated did not include information regarding any projects run by CI.
That's correct, Chair.
Right? And in your view, it only dealt with the fraudulent procurement of assets.
That's correct, Chair. And appointment of family members.
So under the law, there was no basis upon which these documents should be classified.
That's correct, Chair. I'm not a lawyer. I regard the document which you use as an instrument of crime. I cannot see how a document like that can be a classified document. It becomes evidence. So, but I mean that's my opinion. I'm not a lawyer.
And you sought that the charges, at the very least, was under Section 10 of the Corruptions Act.
That's correct, Chair.
And that related to the unauthorized gratification by a buyer to a party to an employment relationship.
That is correct, Chair.
And have you seen any basis or any reasons provided by Dr. Mokgoro why that shouldn't be prosecuted?
No, Chair. Other reasons were given, but not that.
I then want to turn to the next part of your affidavit, and I don't want to go this in detail, but you then also, during the course of your investigations, ended up in Westfield Travel, and I'm back on your January affidavit right now.
Yes, Chair.
And during the course of those investigations, right, you had come across all kinds of flights that had been paid for out of the Secret Services account
That's
that
correct.
had been abused.
That's correct, Chair.
And these, you, during a search of the offices, obtained a number of documentation.
That is correct, Chair.
And you set out how you went about obtaining those documentation from the respective travel agents,
That's correct, Chair.
right? And for our purposes, we don't need to deal with that specifically. But in the course of those investigations, you came across documentation relating to a Nomkoba Chiba.
That is correct, Chair.
Right. Now I want to take you to essentially pick it up from page 113 of your bundle, which starts with a request from this inquiry for the declassification of documentation pertaining to this investigation. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
And effectively it related to allegations that the flight was purchased via the crime intelligence secret account for Advocate Jiba whilst acting as the National Director of Public Prosecutions with the reference SA71, which is alleged to imply that Advocate Jiba was a registered agent and approved by the Chief Financial Officer of Crime Intelligence at the time.
That's correct, Chair.
And at the top, this is a reference which emanated from the Jacques Pau book, The President's Keeper. Correct?
That is correct, Chair.
And subsequent to this inquiry, 2 affidavits were provided by Crime Intelligence. And you see that on page 116 is the first one.
That's correct, Chair.
And I simply want to take you is that the last paragraph on page 4 is confirmation from Crime Intelligence that the undercover agent SA71 is not allocated to Advocate Mokgoro Jiba, as she was and is not an undercover agent.
I see that, that's correct, yeah.
The second affidavit relates to the documentation which emanated from your search at the travel agent.
Choir master speaks. Somebody has a cell phone on that's disturbing our acoustics. But you've had yours on for quite a while.
Can we kindly switch off our cell phones, just so that we can
Finish.
proceed undisturbed? Just check if your cell phone is on and kindly switch it off until we're done. Thank you.
Can I then take you to the second document in the bundle? Right?
Can I just switch off before I get in trouble?
Ah,
This is a firm choir master, you don't mess with her.
I was wondering. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. If we go to the second affidavit, there is a perusal of various invoices that had been obtained from the requisite travel agent,
That's correct, Chair.
right? And in paragraph, in essence, is that there is confirmation that the plane ticket that had been purchased in the name of Mokgoro Jiba, and I'm going to come to you to the spelling permutations in a moment, had been purchased by the Secret Service, had been purchased from the Secret Service account.
That is correct, Chair. The
Right.
payment was made from the Secret Service
Service
account.
account.
Yeah.
And I just want you to briefly explain how the documents emanate at 121, and maybe explain why we have a blacked out block in both your affidavit and in the top of One Stop Travel and Tours.
Chair, for crime intelligence makes use of various front companies, if you want to call them that. So you would find that the name of the company to which this invoice has been issued would have been there. That is why it has been blacked out. That will be on 121, and the same applies to 120, and the same applies to 121. And obviously the name of the company and account number at the bottom of 121 has also been redacted.
And may I place on record that that was by agreement between us as evidence leaders and crime intelligence in order to obtain the documentation?
That's as far as I know. Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Right. So the first document at 120 is an invoice from One Stop Travel and Tours. The second document is a payment in respect of that. The third document, you will see that invoice 155 on the 9th of September 2010, and this was 22. Just tell us again what 122 was.
Chair, when payment was made, they made payment in respect of, in this specific case, I think it was for invoice 147 to 155. So it will be one payment for various invoices. So a pack will be prepared. In order for the, that's how I understand it, in order for the Attorney General to, or the Auditor General to make sense from the invoice which was attached 155 with no details on, there was a key attached to that package of documents, and that key would then translate the invoice number, the agent number, and then obviously the date of flight or the date of travel. So if you have access then to the agent program and the agent numbers and names, you would then know who actually traveled.
And if you look at page 124 of the bundle, I think there might be some duplicates, which is why I'm skipping. You see the same kind of invoice, and below airline ticket is the name Mokgoro Jiba spelled with a Q.
That's correct, Chair.
And how did you understand the system to be working between Westfield Travel and One Stop Travel and Tours?
Chair, when we searched the premises, I was given a bundle of documents,
Which
invoices.
premises?
The premises of One Stop Travel and Tours.
Oh, okay.
I was given a bundle of documents, which consisted of these invoices. Now, on the invoices that was given to me, the name appeared, because I already knew that the name didn't appear on the invoices submitted to the, I will call it Company X, which is CI, which weren't submitted there. I was then informed by the travel agent that he was requested by a member of CI to get the documents in order for me and place it there for me. That's prior to our search and seizure, because we didn't tell anyone that we're going to do a search and seizure. This was part of the information given to us by the member of CI that was in the witness protection program.
In other words, it'd been tipped off.
He had been tipped off, that's correct, yeah. He was also instructed to remove certain names from these invoices. In fact, when I spoke to him later and I took his affidavit, he said he just didn't have time to do it, so the name stayed there. And incidentally, this is not one of the names he was asked to take off. So we confiscated these documents, and then it transpired that this individual did not issue the actual ticket. He had let's call it the mother company, which was Westfield Travel. He would receive a booking in respect of from crime intelligence. He would then make such a booking through his, as I said, the mother company. They would create a booking file or a working sheet, and then they would make a booking on his behalf. Then they would send him an invoice. He would then submit a new invoice. He would create his own invoice, which he then submitted to UTE for payment. Now that second invoice had a substantial increase in amount when it was submitted to Company X for payment. So that allowed him to build up a credit on the account on behalf of Company X, which translated in the abuse of the account later on. And I also was able to obtain his diary, which was behind him in a cupboard. And in the diary you can actually see the conversion. And if you look at page 125, it's a copy of the diary. You'll see it refers to invoice 155. At the bottom of the page, about 5 or 10 lines up. It shows that the invoice amount is 3784. It shows Mokgoro Jiba, and it shows the route, Joburg, Durban, Joburg, the 9th of September, and you can't see the complete amount there from Westfield Travel, but it is 33, so it's a substantial amount less. Page 126, the actual amount that was, the actual cost to that ticket was 3234. So there was a 400 or 500 rand credit raised on that invoice.
And if you turn on 126, you see the name there is Mr. Mokgoro Jiba.
That's
Not
correct.
the Q, but the G.
That's correct.
That's there, right? And then if you turn the page again, you see what is called his worksheet. Where did you get that?
That I got from Westfield Travel.
And you also see Mokgoro Jiba,
That is correct, Chair.
right? And so you know that passenger with that name traveled on that flight, SAA 563, departing from Durban to Johannesburg, and a return flight on the 9th of September, and that was paid for, as crime intelligence has confirmed, out of the Secret Service Fund.
That's correct, Chair.
Right.
And that is Jiba with a J.
Jiba with a J, yes.
It's Mokgoro with a G in the one instance and Mokgoro with a Q. Subsequent to meeting with me, I asked you at asking you whether you recollect. You were not the investigating officer on this inquiry.
No, Chair. As I said, I was busy with the other investigation and the other allegations. So I was at some stage, and I can't remember exactly, when I was asked to depose to an affidavit, because I've informed my immediate superiors, General Zamart and so forth, and I think people from the NPA, about what I've discovered. They then requested, or someone, I can't remember, as I said, I can't recall exactly who requested me to provide an affidavit, which I did. At that time, I've done a few things to establish exactly who is this specific Mokgoro Jiba. And in that regard, I subpoenaed South African Airways, and I also have subpoenaed the Voyager account of South African Airways. I was able to, they were able to provide me with the passenger manifest, which confirmed that Mokgoro Jiba was on the flight, and I'm not referring to Advocate Jiba, I'm saying Mokgoro Jiba was on the flight, because SA doesn't have a situation where you can actually, where you go in, you show your ID, but it's in respect of the name. There's no correspondence with the date of birth or the ID number. And the second thing I did in terms of the Voyager issue, they came back to me and they informed me that she only became a member in 2011. So that information wasn't available to us. But so that is the information that I added to the affidavit and which I provided to the investigating officer.
And you also then made further inquiries. If you look at page 131, from the open account, not the Secret Services account, you were able to ascertain that Richard Mluli was booked on the same flight from Johannesburg to Durban.
That's correct, Chair. As I said, as I alluded earlier to the gentleman that from Crime Intelligence that was assisting us, he alluded me to the fact that Mr. Mluli was also on the same flight. We then followed up on that, and we subsequently were able to show that Mluli was actually on the flight, and it was confirmed by his Voyager miles and the passenger manifest, or the Voyager, his Voyager account. It showed clearly that he claimed for the Voyager miles for that specific travel.
At that stage, this was just all an inquiry, correct?
There was an inquiry. As, from what I know, an inquiry was open and was then further investigated.
And you recall the person who was appointed to investigate was Captain Koos de Klerk, and you deal with that at 49 of your affidavit.
That's correct, Chair. It was Koos de Klerk. With the arrival of Lieutenant General Klemeza, he took away the inquiry from Mr. de Klerk, and he gave it, and there was an instruction, that's how I understood it, that the docket be given to someone that is within the DPSA but in the Eastern Cape.
And what impression did that leave you with, that the docket for an investigation happening in Gauteng was allocated to somebody in the Eastern Cape?
Well, I only found out shortly. I wasn't aware of the fact that it was done. I was contacted to provide a duplicate affidavit in terms of this matter. That's when I heard that the docket is gone, or the inquiry is missing. We don't know where the inquiry is. So from what I understand, that General Labia then instituted disciplinary investigations into those members that allegedly threw the docket away, or the inquiry away, and he's busy compiling or reconstructing the inquiry again. That is as far as I know, but as I said, the inquiry with my documents, with all the annexes, is gone. I don't know where it is.
Now, you have, as indicated in your affidavit, you had a vague recollection that at the time somebody had checked with Home Affairs as to the identity of the permutations of the name Mokgoro Jiba.
That's correct, Chair, and I think it came back with quite a few permutations, because if I can remember correctly, it depends on how you ask the question when they look on the national population database. And I think the question that I've posed at the time, can you look how many Mokgoro Jibas are there on the system? And I didn't have the correct spelling at the time of Advocate Jiba. the first name. So, and I presume what had happened is they looked for Mokgoro and they looked for Jiba, which gives you a lot of permutations of that. There's a lot of people that you identify in terms of that. But subsequent to that, I was asked by the evidence leader to, and I agreed that I will follow up on it and see if I can, and I will approach them again, which I did. And from the information that I received from them, they identified, because the criteria, search criteria has not changed, is now Mokgoro, and I've got 3 different spellings relating to the documentation that was provided to me from Westfield Travel. So I worked on those spellings. I also worked on the actual spelling of Advocate Jiba. And the question that was asked this time around is how many Mokgoro plus Jibas are there? In other words, the combination of the two. And I also added Advocate Jiba's married name to that equation. The information that I received back is that there are 2 Mokgoro Jibas in the country. On the well, let me put it to you this way: on the national registered on the national data, national population database. It's a lady that was born in 1974, and then it was Advocate Jiba as the other person.
Same spelling.
Same spelling. There's nothing in terms of the database. There is no one with the alternative spellings that was on the invoices. So the actual spelling, the correct spelling, is the spelling that they found on the database.
So to be clear, there's no Mokgoro with a G and there's no Mokgoro with a Q.
That is correct, yeah.
Right. So it's 50% possibility that it's the one or the other.
Well, in terms of the database, that's correct, yeah.
I can take it no further than that. Thank you, Advocate. Colonel. I have no further questions.
Questions from the panel, and it's over to you.
Thank you, Judge. I have been deployed to deal with this stanza of the proceedings, and I intend not to detain all of us any longer than is necessary.
You proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Colonel, may I please get the correct pronunciation of your surname and how it is correctly spelled?
It is spelled R-O-E-L-O-F-S-E, and it is pronounced Rulofsa.
Rulofsa.
That's correct.
Thank you very much. You know, where I come from, we very big on pronouncing people's names correctly and spelling them correctly. I intend to canvass 2 theories with you. The first one, I hope we'll get through relatively quicker, and I want to spend a bit of time on the travel allegations. And let me foreshadow my cross with you by just stating to you how I'm going to deal with it, because if we agree, we can go through it relatively quicker. I am going to put certain propositions to you. Where you are able to agree with me, you can say, yes, you agree. Where you are unable to agree, disagree. Where you cannot comment or you are in no position to comment either way, just say so. And with that out of the way, might I ask that we accept that you have no other reason to discount what is said at page 116 of your bundle, which is an affidavit by Julia Skosana in response to a letter from the evidence leader, i.e., whether or not my client Advocate Jiba is in fact a spy with the name SA71. It's an important matter because for some reason her predecessors was also ascribed to RS452. So it is a serious matter. I'm just asking, we know that my colleague took you to an affidavit which confirms at the last paragraph that the undercover agent SA71 is not allocated to Advocate Mokgoro Jiba, as she was not an undercover agent. You agree with that?
I don't have an issue with that.
Thank you. All right. And in your affidavit, the very last one, you indicated that in spite of everything else that had been bandied about relating to the Mdluli investigation, you were under the impression that the matter was closed until Advocate Jiba told you that, in fact, it was only a provisional withdrawal. Do you remember that?
Yes, she didn't tell me that. She told that to Dramat, but I was informed by Dramat that that is what happened during the
Yes.
meeting. Yeah,
Yes, and you accepted that.
I accepted that.
Very well, then let's soldier on to the travel allegations. I want to assist you because I'm privileged to know the correct spelling of Advocate Mokgoro Jiba. For the record, the only correct spelling that appears on the National Population Register, the first name is N-O, Emma for Mike, G for golf, C for Charlie, Oscar Bravo Oscar.
That's correct.
Correct. And there can be no other permutation as far as her name is concerned.
That is correct.
All right. And the surname is J-I-B-A, correct?
That's correct.
And without being facetious about it, you'll also agree that she is a she.
That is correct. But I just need to point out that in terms of the...
I'll get to that. I'll allow
Okay.
you an opportunity. I just want us to
All right.
get to what I'm trying to get out of the way. And you then indicate in your affidavit that as part of the work that you did, you managed to also check whether or not she is a holder of a Voyager card. And as I remember, you said she got one on or about 2011. Do you remember that?
During the information given to me by
Yes.
SA confirmed that it was only 2011, so I couldn't check
That's
whether...
fine.
Yeah.
Might I ask you to just cast your eyes on your affidavit and just read into the record the Voyager number which your investigation revealed?
Can you just tell me where is it? Because... Okay, sorry.
In paragraph
44.
44,
That's correct, yes.
just be kind and just read that Voyager number into the record. It's in your other affidavit.
According to SAA, which they gave me at the time, the Voyager number would have been 32987127.
Please repeat it.
987127.
27. And this you obtained independently from the SAA.
Yes, that
As
is what
the-
they informed me. I would request it on the surname, I mean on the ID number, and then they would have come back with this number to me.
All right. And we'll come to the ID number, and I will tell you how I want us to deal with that without compromising her identity. But we can accept that SAA would be the issuers of the Voyager number to all members. Am I correct?
I would presume so, yes.
Yes, that's why you would have checked with them.
That's correct.
Might I just ask you, and if with the leave of the judge, I'm going to ask that the court orderly just
You wish.
thank you. It's not always that you order a silk around. I put it to you, what has just been handed to you by my leader is the original Voyager card of my client Advocate Mokgoro Jiba. I deliberately did not want to make a copy lest we can do some funny things there. Might I ask you to just confirm that the spelling on that card, which still is valid, is exactly as I had spelled out her name?
That is correct, yeah.
Might I ask you while we at it to please read into the record the number that appears on the face of the card?
It would be 32987129.
29 being the last two digits, correct?
That's correct, Chair.
And admittedly, it is different to the one that you read into the record earlier, is that correct?
That's correct, as per my statement.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking issue with you. You're
No,
not
no,
SAA.
I understand,
Yeah.
but as per my statement.
Hold on to that. Now, we now know the correct spelling. We now know that you had established that she is a holder of a Voyager. We also know that she is not an agent SA71. We also know that she is a she. Now, let us then cast our eyes on what is contained in page 118.
So the Voyager card is issued prior or after 2010? Was it, does it say? Or
It doesn't say, it just gives you the validity because it gets updated annually.
Every year.
Yes.
From, if I may, from what I have, it was only registered, she was registered as a member on 2011-08-18.
Yeah, that's fine.
Trying to find out is that you don't
Yes.
have a card that indicates when she got the card.
Yes, no, I'm happy and I'm not trying to, our point is, our case is not even that she joined 2010, 11, she could have joined any time. But the point of the matter is there is one person and one number. And in fairness to Colonel here, the number that he gave is a number that he was given.
And the number doesn't change.
And the number doesn't change. Yes. No, that's fine. And at 118, this is an affidavit from Nathaniel Ganes Naidu, who was asked to undertake a very pointed investigation. Would you agree?
That's correct, Chair.
And this particular person is not a rookie. He's a lieutenant colonel working at crime intelligence within finance of at least 12 years experience as at the time of deposing to this affidavit.
Well, I imagine he's not a rookie, yes, I agree.
Yeah, 12 years is not a rookie by a long shot. In paragraph 6, which is on 118, he has this to say: I'm attaching NGN03 as a key to show who the passenger was with respect of one-stop travel invoice number 115. In this key, it indicates SA71 as a passenger. We now know if you decode the key, SA71 is not even referring to Advocate G.
That is correct, Chair.
That's fine. And in fact, at paragraph 7, which will gravitate to the point I seek to make, he says the invoice shown by Colonel Rulofse, which appears to be an exact duplicate of invoice 115 that is attached. The only difference is that the name there is spelled as NM November Oscar Mike Quebec Oscar Bravo Oscar Jiba.
That's correct.
Correct. Other than that, one gains an impression that it is reduced to nothing other than a typo if you read this affidavit. Am I correct?
That's correct, yeah. Just to get context of that, document with the name on it was a document provided to me by the travel agent.
That's fine. I'm
Yeah.
getting to the document. Don't worry. If you flip over the page at 120, this is the document that was provided to you by the travel agent.
No. This was provided to the, as I said, Company X
Yeah, okay. But it
for
is-
payment.
Yes, it is an invoice that you testified about when you even said the top page seems to be redacted.
No, I testified, but I'm just saying that I received this document from Company X.
Okay, you got
Okay.
it from Company X,
That's
but
right.
the document is what it is.
It is what it is, yes.
And we can accept for obvious reasons that it had to be redacted, right?
That's correct.
Fine. Of importance there is the price, 3784, and we can see that it's an airline ticket, and the date of travel is the 9th of September 2020, correct?
That is correct, Chair?
Right, and there are no issues there.
No.
All right. Flip over the page. 121 is what appears to be a check payment together with the account against which the funds were drawn,
That's correct, Chair.
and the name there is redacted.
That's correct.
That's fine. The next page seems to be the air ticket details. And in there, we accept that Secret Service operates secretly, and that is why they would use a code as opposed to the real name.
That's correct, Chair.
And the name, or the closest we get to the identity of that spy, is SA71,
That's correct, Chair.
which we know it's not Advocate Jiba. Let's slip over the page. 1, 2, 3. The same. Now, the top part is redacted, and it also seems to be a duplicate, I think, but the amount remains the same, 3784.
That's
S
correct.
with
That's
a P.
correct, Chair.
Right. And then 124. This is apparently an oversight at the instance of One Stop Travel, not you, in that for the first time, we see that there is a name there that is typed at the bottom. Do you see that?
Yeah, it wasn't oversight. They deliberately prepared the documents for the search when I came. So when I got there, this document was there for me.
Okay, even better. But
yeah.
what I'm saying is, you would agree that that name does not accord with the correct spelling of my client.
That is correct, Chair.
All right, that's fine. Now, let's keep the what appears on page 125, which is the titled cash account, or you said it was a diary, and come to page 126. You will see that it is now a tax invoice for a significantly reduced amount of money, 3234, as opposed to 37 odd in the preceding invoices, correct?
That is correct, Chair.
And there, what does it say is the name of the passenger? If you look under travel arrangements, it says details, 1 times 1 air ticket. Are you with me?
I'm with you.
And then it says One Stop Travel and Tours. Would you kindly read into the record, what does it say immediately thereunder?
Jiba Nkombo, Mr.
No, rather spell it if you can't pronounce it correctly.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
It is Jiba, and the spelling of the name is Nomgobo.
And what else is written there?
Next to it is Mr.
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 MR is Mr. And Mr. is a male.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. Let's slip over the page again at 127. And I can put it to you that I'm mindful of the fact that you're not the creator of these documents. I'm just reading out what appears on the face of it. It seems to be what is called a worksheet, am I right?
That's correct, Chair.
And in the middle of the page, it says names. And what name or names are written there? Just read them out as you see them.
Let me spell them again. Maybe you can help me with the correct pronunciation, and I can do it correctly.
No. The issue is not in the pronunciation, it's in the spelling.
It is Jiba/NOMGOBO MR.
Do it again, sir.
That is JIBA/NOMGOBO MR.
Yes, MR.
Yes, that's what I said.
No, you had skipped the M. You had said R.
Okay.
And then
No,
look,
he did mention.
oh, okay, then my apologies. I'm not making an issue. Can you just in the middle of the paragraph and see what is also typed? Because this one was freehand. Do you agree?
That's correct.
Can you just see what appears on the third line there?
It is exactly the same as on the first line there. The written
Excepting
one.
that this one
It's
is typed.
typed. Yes, that's correct.
Now, we all know you've had the privilege of traveling by air. You can agree with me that you get issued a ticket electronically, correct?
That's correct.
And if it is Colonel Ulofse who's traveling, it would say your names exactly as they are, and
That's
it would
correct.
designate your gender. Am I correct?
Yes, that's
Yes.
correct.
Right. Now, This document is called an ETKT, an electronic ticket, and it is an itinerary that is presented to customs and immigrations. Am I correct? Just reading from the top 2 lines.
Yeah, I don't know if it's presented to customs and immigrations because that's not an overseas travel. It probably
No,
would
I'm
be.
just
Yeah.
reading on the face of it.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. And can you just confirm that the name of the traveler as stated there is JIBA, JIBA /NOMGOBOMR?
That's correct.
If we go over the page at 130, there is also an email document that also has the travel details of this particular travel. Can you confirm if I say the name of the traveler is JIBA /NOMGOBO Mr.
That's correct, yeah.
And it also appears for the second time immediately thereunder.
That's correct.
Okay. The balance of 131, 132 relates to Mr. Mdlulu, who is of no concern to me, and I will not take you through there. Now, would you agree with me that if you are traveling and before you embark on an aeroplane, even as far back as 2011, you would have had to provide your form of identity to check if the name that appears on your itinerary or your ticket corresponds with the person who is presenting himself for embarkment. Would that be a fair proposition to put to you?
That's correct, yeah.
Now, at the very least, even if the name or surname were to be misspelled,
Can I, is that factually correct? Because if my recollection is correct and I may be wrong, correct me, because I don't want to think about it and I haven't dealt with it with you. If my recollection is correct, the choir master is not doing very well. The identification story was only after September 20, what was that, the Twin Tower crash? What year was that?
September 2011.
Yes, that's when America became difficult with all of us, not in...
not 2011 with respect, it was way
Was it?
2001,
Okay.
10 years before.
That, my recollection might be bad, yeah.
No.
I thought it was only after that you had to...
Yes,
They insisted on having your ID at the airport, ridiculously so, I might add.
yes, Advocate Morocco, the recollection of the triggering event is correct.
Yeah.
What was slightly out was the timing. That incident happened in 2001. Yes, so after 2001, you had to present some form of identification. The issue that we're talking about is 2011, so at the very least a good 10 years, yes. But the witness had already said yes. Yes. That's in order, I accept that. And the point I was trying to say, I put it to the witness that assuming that there were to be a problem with how the name or the first name is spelled, at the very least, Colonel Ulofse is plainly a man. If Mrs. Ulofse were to be traveling on a
Are
ticket...
you Ulofse or Rulofse?
Rulofse. I'll just refer to you as Colonel.
You play by your own rules.
I play, yes, and I accept the reprimand. I
Thank you,
deserve
Chair.
it. Yes.
You
Colonel
welcome, Mr. Rulofse.
Colonel Rulofse, would you accept that if a Colonel Rulofse who is plainly a male were to let someone who is female travel on that same card, at the very least when they call for your ID, they will see that the person who is presenting themselves for embarkment is of a different gender? That would be patently obvious.
So, with all due respect, in a perfect world, I would agree with you.
Okay.
But you have been If you've traveled a lot like I did, especially at the airports, the check in terms of it's a cursory glance. It is not a proper check of your identity and your name.
Okay.
So I would not, it is what is supposed to happen.
So,
But I cannot, there is no ways that in the real world it happens like that on a constant basis. They will make mistakes.
it's fine, and I never suggested that nobody would make a mistake. I was simply putting a proposition that the purpose of asking for an identity, a form of identification, is to either cursorily or in a very detailed manner to check that the person whose boarding pass is scanned in is the same person who is presenting himself physically for boarding.
That's the idea. That's
the
correct, yes.
idea, and
Yes.
that is what happens. Whether it is done correctly or not is another story.
Yeah, well, that is true.
Okay. Now, in the course of your engagement with SAA, did it ever occur to you to ask for a copy of the boarding ticket?
I did. It wasn't available.
It wasn't available. And would you also agree with me that usually a boarding ticket comes in one document but perforated to be torn into two parts? So when you go through the gate, they will scan, detach what you normally keep in your jacket, and the other part stays with the airline.
That's correct.
Does that accord with your extensive experience of travel?
I don't have extensive experience, but yes,
You
they
said
accord
that-
with that.
okay.
No, I said I just fly a lot.
All right, no, that's fine. Your expensive flying experience. So when I refer to the boarding pass, I was not trying to be finicky. I was just saying that which stays for record keeping by the airline. You said you went back to ask for it, and that was not available.
It was part of the subpoena which I issued to them at the time, and the only thing that they provided me with was the passenger manifest. Yes.
Yes. And the passenger manifest is amongst these documents that we've given.
No, it's not.
It's not.
It was part of my affidavit, which I attached to which was requested from me, and that inquiry is gone. So I don't have access to those documents anymore.
Yes, it's a pity. I was going to ask you as I conclude to say, absent the boarding pass, did you also have occasion to ask for a full passenger, manifest?
It's that is what I received.
And because the document is gone, you wouldn't remember what name or names appeared on the passenger manifest from your memory.
From my memory, I knew that there was Nkombo Jiba and Richard Midluri on the flight.
And from your memory, do you accept that the name that you seem to recollect, seeing on that manifest, would have been no different to the name that you provided in this bundle of documents?
Well, I presume so. I can't remember specifically
Yes.
that, yes.
Yes, and I don't expect, I was just putting it as a proposition to you. Now, what number? And it's been pointed out to me to ask of you that you say you then formed an impression that the person who was on that plane in economy with Richard Mdluli in business must have been this advocate Jiba.
I say that because of as I said to you, I wasn't aware that Mr. Mdluli was on the flight, or General Mdluli on the flight. And when I spoke to the person who gave me the information, which is the same person which I alluded to earlier that assisted us, he informed me that General Mdluli was also on the flight. And then subsequent to that, I was able to confirm it. Other than that, I didn't know he was on the flight. So
can I ask you to
that is why I made that, because he was bringing the situation in where he didn't know Advocate Jiba. He was just referring to someone from the MPA, if I remember correctly, and Mdluli that went to Durban.
If you cast your eyes on what you say in paragraph 48, and I'll, for experience, read it. You say, based on the information at my disposal, I reasonably concluded that it was Advocate Jiba on the flight, which is why I was asking.
Yes, no, I understand that.
Yes. So that was really based on conjecture.
That was based on what he told me, and I did not know of any other Nkobo Jiba at the MPA.
Okay. Now, do you accept that on the face of what is before us at the moment, you are wrong? That the Jiba, at the very least, around whom this document center is a Misty Jiba, whose name is spelled way differently to my female client, Mokgoro Jiba.
So I can't agree with you there. As I said to you, I undertook to make inquiries from Department of Home Affairs.
Okay.
There is no mail with that name
Yes.
in either format.
Can I put it to you differently? You can't agree with me, and I accept that. Can you disagree with the proposition that I'm putting to you, sitting where you are with the information that you have, with the inquiries that we've done? Saying this to the commission, can you say to this inquiry that the conclusion or the inference that I am arriving at with what I have at my disposal is the only inference that can be drawn?
Look, as I said, from my inquiry from Department of Home Affairs, and if the database in terms of the population register is correct, then there are 2 Nkobo Jibas in the country. So I think, based on the information at my disposal at the time, I was confident that the information was correct, and after I followed up on it, I was confident it was correct. And I didn't do any further investigation, so I don't know what came out after that.
Yes.
So that is where as far as I can take it.
That's fine. And I put it to you that I'm instructed that Advocate Jiba had nothing to do with travels under the auspices of crime intelligence. I further put it to you that I'm instructed that she was not on that flight on the day.
I can't comment on that.
In fact, she instructs me that she's highly upset and angered by that unsubstantiated allegation, which is highly defamatory.
If it is not true, I would also be upset if I'm her. I'm just stating the facts as I uncovered it.
And as far as you are able to give commentary.
Correct. I can only give it in context as
Yes.
to when and how it happened.
Do you have any reason to suggest that she might be knowledgeable in terms of how crime intelligence does its transactions, just generally? Are you able to say she must have, or she does have some insight on how crime intelligence transacts?
If your question is, did she know how this was paid? If we take for one moment she did go on a flight, and your question is, she asked me how it was paid, then my opinion from the beginning is there's no way that she would have known how the payment was made. She would have known she didn't make payment, but she would not have known how payment was made.
How would Colonel, yeah, the Afrikaans one sounds better, it's easy. How would the colonel know what Jiba knows?
No, I'm just saying if in this instance, if you take it that.
Look, Judge, he took the winds out of my sails.
Sorry, Judge.
I understand it was a proposition that was meant to be debated with me, but he's really answered. And I was not trying to throw a curveball. The idea was simply to follow up on a proposition that Advocate Jiba says, as a matter of fact, she knows absolutely nothing how even crime intelligence does their own internal transactions. My apologies for the inelegance. Yes. No, it's fine.
I'm now lost. I wasn't the one spoken to.
Yes, no, it's fine. I'm concluding by just putting it to you that she is stating on record, on pain of her conscience, that she is a she never traveled on that day. She does not even know who traveled. It has absolutely nothing to do with her. Lastly, she is definitely not SA 71, and that's where I leave it.
Do you want me to comment on that?
No, I see you are nodding. A
yes,
nod is
sir.
a yes, am I right?
Yes. No, look, I am not, I can't comment on the fact that she was or was not on the flight. I am in a position from where I sit and from the knowledge that I have that I know that she's not 71. I agree with that. I don't have an issue with that. As far as that is concerned, and I also agree with the fact that she didn't know how payment was made. I don't have an issue with that either. The question is, why did her name appear in that key by Crime Intelligence why did a name like that appear in that key?
I'm glad you keep referring to her as a she, and the name that appears on the documentation before this inquiry is a Mr. But we're not going to debate it. I accept what you say.
Okay.
I just put to you what her instructions are, as I'm obliged to do. She is a she.
Well, definitely.
Thank you. Judge, thanks for the indulgence. I see we've gone beyond the final whistle. I'm indebted to the inquiry.
But thank you for that cross-examination. And
Sorry.
Ms. Bauer, we still have Mr. Rip to cross-examine. Is that possible today?
Is depends on how long it's going to be.
Yes. Mr. Rip,
Ma'am,
what are you going to do?
I think it's going to be a while, madam. So
It's going to be a while.
yeah.
Can we leave it for Monday?
yes,
can't.
if you excuse me, so that my learned friend can do the cross-examination on Monday. I won't be on Monday, but as I say, I've got a very competent assistant and co-counsel with me, so I'm sure he can do it on Monday.
Remember, we also have Mr. Hofmeyer on Monday. What do you want to do?
We inclined to do it along the following way, subject to whether Colonel Rulofse is available to finish it on Monday morning. We would suggest that he finishes it. We go to Colonel Boyson and we call Mr. Hofmeyer back after that. Maybe Tuesday, depending on how far you get to finish between Rulofse, Boyson, and then Hofmeyer back.
Can we start earlier than 10 o'clock? It might help.
Mr. Masuku?
Can we start earlier? It would help if we all...
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. And then you will discuss with each other who you start with, Colonel Rulofse or Hofmeyer.
Chair, one of our difficulties is that I'm not here on Monday,
Yeah, you're not
and
here on Monday.
my juniors were in and out during. I led the staff Hofmeyer, and my juniors were in and out
Yeah.
during the cross. So which is why I'm not trying to put him down for Monday. I'm trying to work out whether I can, if we can work out how to juggle that.
Can we leave that conversation, that
Yes.
discussion between you, and we'll hear from you, and please keep the witnesses closely informed. Yeah, because you have to hear from them of their availability. And then I would ask that you seriously think about starting a bit earlier, in real terms, because today we thought we'll start earlier, we didn't. Think about that and let us know.
I will always we have had some discussions. I will send a revised schedule out to everybody.
All right. That sounds good enough. Thank you. Colonel Rulofse, baie dankie. Thank you very much for making yourself available. Ons waardeer dit baie. Okay. Kindly be reminded that you are still under oath and you are still subject to cross-examination. Okay?
I understand that, Chair.
You understand it perfectly.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. We adjourn until Monday. Did you give us the time? 9 o'clock or 9:30? 9 o'clock. 9:30?
The problem with 9 is not started.
No, okay. Strictly 9:30. To everybody, okay?
So these are annexures of laws.
As hard as they can to speak up. Speak up, number one.
Then she thanked me for the excellent job that I had done in the NPA. I also thanked the colleague for the opportunity I had been given to test my ideas in the NPA, and I also undertook to prepare a handover report to my successor, which I think I did within 24 hours. Then I stepped down as the acting director of prosecutions. End of 2015, I caved in, I resigned, then I joined the Pietermaritzburg Bar for privilege, as you have already stated in your introductory remarks. I think that is it. Apologies for not being short to answer.
We're going to make an effort to do that. Did you have any sign that this was coming?
I would say an answer will be resounding yes. Resounding yes because it was public knowledge. Public knowledge in the sense that I used to receive SMSs. I thought that it was appropriate for me to respond.
And that response is at page 4 of 6. It is the email sent on the 30th of June 2012 at 9:12, and you send it to Advocate Chami, Jiva, and Majukwini, correct?
That is the position. So as I was responding here, I thought there was quite a number of principles that I had to enunciate with. I gained that its preamble encapsulates that all the rights enshrined in the Constitution have to be respected, protected, and promoted. This includes the right to human dignity, which is affirmed by Section 10 of the same Constitution. Paragraph 2, I think it is significant that I alert you, or I bring it to your consciousness that as a South African citizen,
Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. Masuku?
Thank you. Good morning, Advocate Mlocho.
greetings, sir. How are you?
Very well, sir.
Yeah.
Can I just, I will have a few questions for you relating to the evidence you have given properly. Let me just reformulate it. Can you describe to us what you understand by provisional delegation? What was it intended to do?
My understanding at the time was that the delegation will be provisional, pending the.
Is there a process in the NPA of raising a complaint against a colleague?
It didn't, as far as I can remember, it didn't have any classified documents in the docket. In other words, the classification of dockets could not have been an issue at the time. The only classified documents which related to that specific incident would have been the two vehicles in question, in other words, the vehicles that was traded in, and it would have been the documents that we have received from crime intelligence regarding the purchase of those two vehicles. But from my knowledge, as far as I can remember, those two documents were not in the docket at the time, when the decision was made to apply for the warrant of arrest.
Everybody. Okay.
Check something. So these are annexures of laws.